I saw her again at the cafe near 7th and Laurel. The kind of place where nothing really happens, except that morning light always seems to land on the same two tables. She sat by the window, reading something old and dog-eared, the kind of book people only out when they want to be left alone. I didn't mean to notice her every morning, it just happened. I'd order my usual, black coffee, 2 sugars, and she'd already be there, stirring her tea like she was counting seconds. Once, I caught her looking at me when I was tapping my phone screen too long without sending the message I'd typed. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. "Coffee guy," she called me once. Not mockingly, just like she'd decided that was my name. I said tea woman, before I could stop myself. She laughed, quietly, like she hadn't done that in a while. That was the first time I saw the ring wasn't there anymore. I didn't know her story then. Just that she looked like someone who'd once been sure of everything and now wasn't. There was a steadiness in the way she held her cup. Fingers wrapped tight, like the warmth was the only thing keeping her still. The next morning, she wasn't there, neither was I for a few days. Work was heavy, sleep was short. When I finally came back, she was already at her table again, this time with a notebook open. The same mug, the same slow stirring motion. "You disappeared," she said without looking up. "Thought I'd give your tea some peace. You think too much." She glanced up then, and I felt something quiet shift inside me. Not attraction, not exactly. Recognition, maybe. Like we were both just pretending not to notice how empty the mornings had been. We fell into a rhythm. Not a friendship, not really. Just two people who happened to choose the same hour of the same day. She'd ask about my job, I'd ask about her reading. She never mentioned anyone else. No husband, no ex. Just small things: the weather, how early the leaves turned this year, how bad the coffee sometimes was when the young barista made it. Once, she wiped a sugar spill from the table with the corner of her napkin and said softly, "You remind me of someone I used to know." I didn't ask who. I just folded my own napkin until it was a thin white line and said, "Hope that's a good thing." She smiled like she wasn't sure. A week later, the cafe was nearly empty, rain tapping at the windows, her hair slightly damp. I sat across from her, uninvited, and she didn't move the book from my side of the table. She said, "My husband called. Wants to do a vow renewal next month." Her tone was flat, the kind people use when they're already past caring. I didn't know what to say, so I looked at her hands. No ring still. Just a faint tan line that said it had been there once long enough to matter. "What are you going to do?" I asked. She stirred her tea again. "Probably nothing." That night, when I got home, I saw a message I didn't expect. From her. He said I was his mistake. I told him he was right. I stared at it for a long time. The glow of the screen lighting the room that still smelled like coffee and rain. I didn't reply. But the next morning, I ordered 2 coffees instead of 1. The next few mornings felt different. We didn't talk about the message she'd sent. We didn't even acknowledge it. But there was something unspoken between us now. The kind of awareness that hums in the quiet. She started sitting at the far table, by the plants. I thought it was coincidence until the barista said, "She saved your usual spot." So, I joined her. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. 2 coffees again? She asked, eyeing the cups. I sat down. "Insurance," I said, "in case one gets cold." She smiled. "You're terrible at lying." I wanted to tell her I wasn't lying. That one was always for her. But the words stayed where they always did, half-formed, behind my teeth. That day, she told me something. Not much, but enough to feel like she was handing me a fragile thing. "I used to come here with my husband," she said. "Before he started taking calls at the table. Before we stopped talking altogether." I didn't say anything, I just listened, tracing a finger along the rim of my cup. She added, "You remind me of what we were like before it all went quiet." It was supposed to be comforting, maybe even harmless, but something about it twisted inside me. "I'm not him," I said softly. "I know," she replied. "That's why I can stand to sit here." The rain outside was slow that morning. We both watched it bead on the window, the reflection of her face overlapping mine in the glass. She asked about my life in that absent-minded way people do when they don't want to talk about their own. I told her I'd just started working in design, Long hours, not much to show for it yet. You look too young to be tired, she said, and you look too calm to be hurting. I replied, then immediately wished I hadn't. She didn't react right away. Just folded her napkin neatly, the same way I did. A small mirror. Finally, she said, we'll both fake it well, don't we? The cafe felt too small after that. I noticed every sound, the clink of a spoon, the scrape of her chair leg. I imagined reaching across, brushing the back of her hand, saying something brave. But instead, I adjusted my watch, like time was something I could control. When we stood to leave, she reached out. Maybe to steady herself, maybe something else, and her fingers brushed the sleeve of my jacket. It was barely a touch, light as a thought, but I felt it for hours afterward, like static under my skin. At the door, she said, you shouldn't wait for people like me. I'm not, I lied. She looked at me for a long moment, tired eyes, soft mouth, a trace of rain still in her hair. Then she said, good, and walked away. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. I didn't see her for 4 days. Not long enough to call it missing someone, but enough to notice the empty space where she should have been. The cafe felt wrong without her. The barista asked if I wanted the usual, and I almost said, make it 2, before stopping myself. When she finally walked in, it was late afternoon instead of morning. Different light, different version of her. Hair tied up, sunglasses still on, phone pressed to her ear. Her tone clipped, controlled. I only caught a few words. No, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Then she saw me. Something in her face softened, just a fraction, like she'd been holding her breath for days. Coffee guy, she said, voice tired, but warmer than before. Thought you switched cafes. I tried to joke. Just switched mornings. Though we sat outside this time. The air was thick, the kind that sticks to your skin. She asked about work. I asked about her reading, both of us pretending we weren't just circling something else entirely. She reached for her cup, then stopped. You know, this probably looks bad, she said. Looks bad to who? She tilted her head. To anyone watching, a woman my age. With coffee guy. I interrupted, her lips curved. Exactly. She said it lightly, but I could hear the edge beneath. The awareness of it, the gap between us. Then, her phone rang again. She didn't answer, but the screen lit up long enough for me to see the name. Evan. She turned it over, face down. He doesn't get to call me anymore, she muttered. I wanted to ask who he was. I already knew though. You can tell by the way someone says a name, like it still has a key to their house. Instead I said, you don't have to explain. Good, she whispered, almost to herself. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Just the hum of traffic, the faint sound of cups being washed inside. I noticed how she traced the rim of her mug with her thumb, slow circles. The way her other hand rested near mine, close enough to feel the heat. Every now and then, she'd glance at me, quick and unreadable. I thought she might say something then. Something that would change the air between us. But she didn't. She just looked out at the street and said, you'll ruin yourself if you keep trying to save people like me. I'm not trying to save you. She finally turned to me. Then what are you doing? I didn't have an answer. Just a thought, this. She stood to leave, gathering her things too fast, brushing past my hand as she did. Not an accident, not quite deliberate either. See you, she said softly. I almost reached for her wrist. Almost. She paused like she felt it, then walked away. We didn't touch. But the space between our hands, that almost, felt like a confession neither of us could afford to speak. We met again without planning it. The park near the cafe, late afternoon. She was sitting on a bench under a jacaranda tree, purple petals scattered around her, like she'd been there long enough for the world to decorate her absence. I almost walked past, almost, but she looked up at the sound of my footsteps, and that was enough. Hey, she said, small smile. I was starting to think you were avoiding me. I was, I admitted. Her eyebrows lifted. Honest today. Trying it out. She laughed softly, the kind that doesn't last long but lingers in the air after. We sat in silence for a while. A group of kids played soccer nearby. The sky was low, heavy with evening. I watched her thumb scroll idly through her phone. Then stop, then lock the screen again without looking at it. Still him? I asked quietly. She didn't look up. He sent me an old photo. From our wedding. Said he misses who I used to be. Her voice cracked a little at the end. Just enough for me to hear the truth behind the calm. Do you? I asked. Miss who you used to be? She finally met my eyes. Sometimes. Mostly I just miss not being afraid. A breeze came through, soft, cool. She pulled her cardigan tighter around herself. I don't know why I keep ending up here, she said. With you, it's not appropriate. I wanted to laugh at the word. We're drinking coffee, not committing crimes. You know that's not what I mean. I did. I felt it in the way her voice trembled on you. I tried to keep it light. So I'm your guilty pleasure now. She smiled without looking at me. Something like that. Quieter. You make it too easy to forget the rules. The air felt thinner suddenly. I wanted to tell her that I thought about her too. At night, between messages I never sent. That every time I saw someone her age, I caught myself wondering if they laughed the same way. Instead I said, you don't owe him another chance. She closed her eyes for a second. I know. But I owe myself a reason not to. That landed between us like something fragile. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees looking at the ground. Can I tell you something stupid? Always. I told my sister about you. My pulse stumbled. Yet what'd you say? That you're kind. A pause. Too kind, maybe. The corner of my mouth twitched. That's not a bad thing. It is, she said, finally turning to me. When I start expecting it. For a heartbeat, everything went still, the kids' laughter fading, wind holding its breath. Her hand brushed the bench between us, just inches from mine. A flicker of movement, hesitation, electricity. She whispered, don't look at me like that. I didn't move. Like what? Her eyes stayed on mine. Like you could be the reason I stay. And then, silence. The kind that isn't empty, just full of all the things we almost said. Neither of us looked away, neither of us crossed the line, not yet. She stopped coming. No warning, no message. Just absence. The kind that makes everything else sound too loud. The hiss of the coffee machine, the scrape of a chair, my name called by the barista like an echo with no answer. At first, I told myself it was temporary. People get busy, they travel, they change routines. But by the fifth morning, I'd memorized the way her chair stayed tucked in, how the light hit the empty spot by the window, and made it look like she'd never been there at all. I walked by her building once. Not on purpose. Or maybe exactly on purpose. The blinds were half closed, a sliver of light cutting through the room. A man's shadow moved across it. I stopped walking, my chest tightened. Then the shadow leaned close, kissed someone I couldn't see, and the light went out. I told myself it could have been anyone. A friend, a relative, a memory playing tricks. But that night, she posted a photo online. A blurry skyline, caption, trying again. I didn't sleep much. The next morning my phone buzzed, a message from her. Don't wait for me tomorrow. No explanation, no apology, just a sentence that didn't know how to end. I typed a dozen replies. Are you okay? Is it him? Did I do something? None of them sent. I deleted every word. Days passed like static. I started coming to the cafe later, sitting by the door instead of our table. I watched couples walk by, fingers brushing, laughter spilling, and wondered if she was somewhere laughing like that again. Part of me was angry. Another part, the quieter, more honest one, was relieved. Relief always hides inside disappointment. It's the part that knows you were getting too close to the fire. Still, I kept expecting her to walk in. It was on the 10th day that I finally saw her again. Across the street this time, not in the cafe, she was with him. The man from the shadow. Tall, older, confident in that careless way of people who think they've already won. He held her waist like it belonged to him. She let him. But when the light changed, she looked up, saw me standing there, coffee in hand, no smile, no wave, just a flicker of recognition like a ghost seeing its reflection. Then she looked away first. That night, I opened a blank message again. Typed 3 words. I miss us. I stared at it until the screen dimmed, the glow fading into my reflection. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. It had been 3 months. Long enough for the cafe to replace the tables, repaint the walls, change the music. Long enough for me to stop checking the door every time it opened. I saw her again on a Thursday evening. By accident, maybe fate, though I don't believe in that anymore. She was coming out of the grocery store, holding a paper bag against her chest. Her hair was shorter now, no ring, no man beside her. She noticed me before I could decide whether to say anything. For a moment neither of us moved. Then she smiled, small, unsure, like testing a word she hadn't spoken in years. "Hey," she said. "Hey." We stood there on the sidewalk, both half laughing at the awkwardness of it. The air smelled like rain and oranges. We ended up walking back together, not far, just to her street. The bag was heavier than it looked, and when I offered to carry it, she didn't argue. "You disappeared," I said quietly. "I know." "Did he?" She shook her head. "He tried." "I didn't." I nodded, pretending that answer didn't hit harder than it should have. At her doorstep, she hesitated. Then, "Do you want to come in for a minute? It's just tea." I followed her inside. The apartment was cleaner than I remembered, emptier too. There were still 2 cups on the counter, though, as if she hadn't decided whether to stop setting the second one. She filled the kettle, and the sound of water felt louder than any words we could have said. Finally, she turned to me. "I don't really know what to say to you," she admitted. "Everything I could say would sound selfish. Try me." She leaned against the counter, eyes on the floor. "When you stopped coming around, I thought I'd feel relieved. Instead, it felt like someone turned the volume down on everything else." I swallowed. "You could have said that before." I didn't know how. Silence again. Just the hum of the kettle heating up. Then she looked at me. Really looked. "You shouldn't wait for people like me," she said softly, the same words as before, but this time, they broke a little in the middle. "I'm not waiting," I said. "I'm just here." The kettle clicked off. Neither of us moved. Steam curled between us, thin and white, disappearing as fast as it formed. "I don't know what you want from me," she said, barely above a whisper. "Nothin'," I said. After a beat, "Just this." And without planning it, my hand brushed hers as we reached for the same cup. She didn't pull away this time. No kiss. No promises. Just 2 people standing too close in a quiet kitchen, the air heavy with what they finally understood. She exhaled slowly. "Okay, that was all. But it was enough. It's been a year. The cafe looks different again, new owners, new barista, same old clock that still said 8:47 am for no reason anyone can explain. I still come here most mornings. Habit, I guess. Some habits don't ask for meaning. She comes too, sometimes later, sometimes earlier. We don't sit together every day, not anymore. Some mornings, she reads by the window. Some, she joins me without a word. We've stopped trying to name what we are. It's just us, in whatever shape the day allows." That morning, she arrived just as I was finishing my coffee. Her hair was longer again. There was light in her face that hadn't been there before. Not youth, not even happiness exactly, just steadiness. "Still black?" she asked, setting down her bag. "Still tea?" I asked back. "Still us." We didn't talk much. We never really needed to. The air between us has its own language now, one made of small gestures and familiar silences. She reached across the table to steady my cup when I bumped it. Her fingers lingered a second longer than necessary. I didn't move my hand away. Sometimes people look at us and wonder. The age gap still whispers. The old story still follows her. The husband, the vow renewal, the confession that broke something open in both of us. But life has quieted down. She works from home now. I design from anywhere with Wi-Fi and coffee. We walk together in the evenings. The same park, the same bench. We once told me she was afraid of herself. Last week, she said, "Do you ever think about how strange this all started?" "Every time you stir your tea," I said. She laughed, shaking her head. "You remember everything. Only the important things." She leans on the back of the bench now, looking at the sky turning gold. "You know what I like about us?" "What?" "That we never promised anything. We just kept showing up." I thought about that for a long moment, about how the best kind of peace isn't found in declarations, but in the quiet rhythm of 2 people who finally stopped pretending not to care. I reached out, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. She didn't look away. "You still take your coffee too strong," she said softly. "And you still let it get cold before you finish," I answered. We both smiled. The kind that feels like the end of a long story no one else will ever fully understand. When we finally stood to leave, she took my arm without asking. The air was cool, the evening steady, and for the first time, it didn't feel like we were walking towards something uncertain. Just forward.